Most of the cases I work are wood-destroying organisms on structures. Number two is bites and stings for some reason. That is a very unusual one. The other one is pesticide misapplication exposure. Somebody says they got sick after an application or something, or a technician got ill because they didn't receive proper training.
Hey everyone, we're here with the Pest Playbook series. We have Bob Sprague with us. He is a technical legal consultant in urban pest control. So we're really excited about this session to hear the 101 on what a pest control owner needs to know about setting themselves up for correct legal structure. So Bob, first we'd love to hear a little bit about your story, how you got into the pest control space, and then we can jump into the 101.
Appreciate you having me on today. It's pretty simple. I went to Texas A&M University and got my degree in entomology. Then I went straight into the urban pest control field. After that, I became an investigator for the state of Texas Pest Control Board. I worked over 600 consumer complaints over that time. So after I got out of the state, I said, well, it kind of made my niche, which I really enjoyed doing the investigation part and working the laws and stuff and all the different parts of that. Then I started on my own back in 2000. I've been on my own since then.
Okay, that's awesome. What a awesome career and pedigree that's lead up to where you are today. Very cool. So every pest control company, I'm sure you deal with a lot, carries
Yeah.
hidden legal risks, right? So
Yes.
talk to us. You had mentioned before we jumped on, there are three core areas that you see come up most often where pest control companies get in trouble. Let's talk through those.
The topics are those. Most of the cases I worked, even with the state as an investigator now, is the top three are wood destroying organisms on structures, especially with the real estate inspection reports. I know different states have different type of reports, but that's kind of the number one cases I work. Number two is bites and stings for some reason. That is a very unusual one that pops up every once in a while. But with especially the new bed bug stuff coming up, back in the 90s, it wasn't a big deal. Now I guess bed bugs are pretty much a big issue. But things like the fire ant and spider bites and things like that come up. The other one is pesticide misapplication exposure. Somebody says they got sick after an application or something, or a technician got ill because they didn't receive proper training or proper um, equipment, PPE equipment to help them. I get some of that also.
Interesting. So what I would love then is, because I do want to go into this a little bit deeper. So for the perspective of, any pest control owners that might be watching this video, can you take us through an example, of each one of these instances where pest control owners really need to pay attention to? I know you touched a little bit like on bites is a pretty obvious one, and
Yeah,
then also with technicians, but maybe you could
yeah.
give us an example that you've seen that pest control owners need to pay attention to.
Well, during the stint with the state and everything, they had to follow rules and regulations on proper application methods, disclosure of information on your chemical use records, technician training records, and things like that. Was a lot of times is lacking when I go to a pest control company, and if I do an audit or something, their training records aren't very up to date or kind of lacking in a lot of information. Their chemical use records are missing a couple of things, or they write something down. That way, a good example, I worked a case out of, it doesn't matter what size company it is either. Some of these are larger companies will be in violation of this stuff, even though you think they would have more training and stuff like that. It was an issue where girl was sick supposedly after she went to bed at a house, and the technician, the first thing was that the issue was fire ants in the room and in the girl's bed. Well, the technician decided to spray the bed for one thing, which was a bad type of thing. Then also he put some dust inside a electrical socket, and that was out next to her bed, and it was all over the place down the bottom there of the on the ground. And he said that he used 2 ounces of dust. Well, in the case was going through it, it said it asked for grams of dust application. Now, ounces is over much, much more applicable. It was on the ground. He said he uses 2 ounces of 2 grams, which is way much more than it's supposed to. And the attorneys are the especially against the pest control operator, they're looking for anything they can get their upper hand on the pest control operator to make them look bad and get what they want from the pest control operator. At other times, they're not prepared on any of their paperwork, any of their training records, or anything like that to go back to be able to say, oh, I don't remember this, or that technician left somewhere and don't have the right information. So proper documentation and proper training for the technicians is very, very important on type of pest control itself. Now, I'm going to go a little different way on inspections and stuff, especially on WDI reports. They have in the state of Texas, the inspection report for real estate transaction report states that the inspection is only good for the day of inspection. We all know the reason because of that, because termites can come out the next day and cause issues with that and they're not responsible for anything later. A lot of these cases come up 6 months to a year, maybe later on the inspection, and the technician or person, whoever did the inspection, does not recall what happened at that time. They can go back to their paperwork and they say, well, I guess I missed it, and they don't have anything. I try to stress, more importantly for anything, is photographs or video. Back in the day, when I was doing the stuff, you took pictures, you got to get it developed. Now you got the technology, you can take thousands of pictures, and you can do a whole inspection with a video, and you can date it to when it was done. Then you can go back and look at it and see if there was actually something that even 10, a year, something like 6 months, a year later.
Wow. So a proof of service where the
Yes.
technician
Yeah.
actually captures, it just lays
Yeah.
it out. This is what I've done. That is something
Yeah.
that you'd recommend all pest owners.
Exactly, because they're going to come with everything you got. They're going to usually get an expert like me come in, and I'm asking the question, well, what happened? Well, I told them I missed it. Well, that's the number one thing you shouldn't be telling them first place. If you didn't miss it, you don't know. You don't automatically say you're guilty because they use that against you, and they use everything that you miss on the report or anything like that as far as not being able to, use that against you in certain situations. Had a
And
case.
how many of I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. I'm just curious. How many of with the audits that you've done over your 44 years of experience, are there very many pest owners that are proactive in this and they're training their technicians to photograph their jobs, record their jobs done, or is it a low adoption?
Well, again, it depends on some of the cases I do when I do an audit, I will find a few different things that needed to be done or corrected to be able to make sure that you want to be prepared when you go to court. And most of these pest control companies are not prepared documentation wise or video wise or anything like that. And you want to use all the tools and all the evidence you can to fight this if you think you're right on the situation. But again, when I go in, like I said, a situation where I went to it was a case out of Houston on a drywood case. They were really going over the report itself. And the gentleman also was doing a home inspection, and he listed as on his home inspection that he inspected the attic. But on his WDI report, he marked attic as inaccessible. And I went round and round with that attorney for about a half hour. He goes, well, he didn't inspect the attic. It says here on WDI report, yes, he did. I show you on his home inspector report he did. Well, he didn't go and do this. So he's in violation of this. So to us, he didn't inspect the attic. I said, yes, he does. I got documentation here. And we went round and round on that because they kept pushing that. Well, what about this here? He didn't write this down properly. And again, any little thing they're going to find, they're going to use against you.
Love that. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, there's no arguing once you've got video and photo involved. I think you can find a lot of wiggle room if you're just trying to write things down and you don't have actual video and photo evidence.
Yes.
Great. So just stepping out a little bit broader, let's take a scenario where maybe a pest control company has been around for a few years. They're to the point where they're just starting to scale operations, and legal is something that's really come on their radar. What would you recommend are some of the things that maybe they should audit or look for as legal weak points to strengthen their operation?
Well, I don't know about Florida or anything. In Texas, the regulations say you can do a self-audit or have an audit, or somebody can come in and audit your place before an inspector comes by or an investigator to look at your paperwork to make sure it's up to date with the legal stuff going on. So again, they'll look at all your records, and they'll do the audit for you. And whatever you do, you correct the mistakes and send it back to the state and show them, oh, I've corrected all these things. And again, that gives you an idea of what your weaknesses were. When you're doing the pest control, what you could have basically improved what you're doing and make sure that you're covered more that way. Or you can get an independent auditor like myself can come in and do that, do whatever what you do if you want. Sometimes the state people, they make mistakes. We made mistakes too. Had a company that missed several violations when they did their inspections. And the state of Texas does inspection. I forgot. I don't think they every once in a while they'll go to a pest control company and do an inspection of all their paperwork. Well, they missed several inspections, missed several violations. They turned around, they got a complaint against them, and they filed the violation against them, but they missed it. And I told them when we went to the state, and I told the state, I said, well, I told them
it's a reverse Uno
they
card.
were a violation on all these until now. How come you didn't tell them in the first place? The investigators can make complaint. There's one time I made a mistake too. It was on an inspection for a WDI report. Was that they missed an area of conducive condition, but they put a concrete little ramp that covered the cold joint and up to the thing. So there was a separation between the slab separation and the cold joint where to hit the wood. So I consider that a conducive condition because termites come up there behind there, or at least a inaccessible area. And the guy kept swearing to that I didn't miss that. I didn't miss that. So I went back to the homeowner and everything and said, well, what about this? Because, oh yeah, well, after I moved in, I built that. So again, I said, well, okay, well, I guess I got to take that off. It was red faced, but he didn't remember that was there. But the homeowner told me, yes, he put there. So all this makes a big difference. If you're going to told me and said, well, here's a photograph of that wasn't there. So
Interesting.
these things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Pest is such an interesting space, and there are so many moving parts and people in and out of so many different homes and so many things to consider that I think get overlooked. And a lot of times it might just be the technicians trying to do their job, but they weren't trained properly, or
Exactly.
the misapplication of certain. In fact, that was kind of the next segment that I would love to dig into a little bit more, that I think maybe would be very helpful for pest control owners to understand is properly training their technicians for when they do using chemicals. And these are some pretty
Yes.
powerful chemicals, and they're designed to kill bugs. Maybe you could take us through what your experience as an auditor has been in making sure that pest control owners are training their technicians to properly apply the chemicals, and in that same vein, making sure they're using the right chemicals.
Again, the amount of pesticide mixture is one of the things that I've run into quite a bit, is that they misappropriate grams with ounces. If they're going to use that against you, say, well, I use grams. It said on your paperwork that you use ounces. And you would agree, they would say, you would agree that's much more than you're supposed to, right? And you can't say no, but I did do it. But it says right here that you did that. Getting the right people to work for you also, I know that's a challenge nowadays. Even back in my days, making sure that person doesn't go kind of rogue. Like I said, I mentioned one about the technician spraying the girl's bed for fire ants. It was a larger company. I can't believe they sent him out there he did that in the first place. There was another one. It was another larger company. The technician came out. It was a slab home. There was grass growing up against the outside of the house, and he thought that the soil was above the grade. So he decided to drill through the slab, through the wall, into a baby's playpen with the baby in it. And
Wow.
yeah. And when I got over there, I was working for the state at the time and said, you need to get over here right now, and you need to tell these people that it was a mistake, that he didn't mean to do, and they brought the technician. They fired him on the spot for doing that in the first place because he said, well, it was below grade. I said, I pulled the grass back. I said, this is below grade. And the manager in the company said, get out of here. You're fired. I told the homeowner, said, they will do what you tell them to do. It never went to a court case or anything like that because they took care of everything right then and there. Another one was they sprayed, companies had a technician spray Roundup through the backyard of a house because they went to the wrong house. with Roundup. The lady said, well, no, that was my wildflower garden. So they got about 50 grand of
Wow.
landscaping done. Those things happen quite a bit, go in the wrong house, doing the wrong thing. Your technicians, you got to make sure they're good, hire correctly, background checks. Another thing, they don't have an attorney on payroll or to be able to, when they can call up and say, hey, I have a question about this for a legal issue here. Oh my goodness, I got to call an attorney now. Oh my goodness, should have done this in the first place instead of got taken here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's another thing. You tell the pest control people, be proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah,
Proactive center. Right.
absolutely. And speaking of proactive, so when a pest control company is just getting started, Bob, you mentioned a couple things, having a lawyer that you can access in times of need, right? What about just general setup? Do you have any recommendations for a pest control company on just the basic 101 things that they need to have in place just to be in a legally safe position?
Yeah, you can get a private auditor like myself and come in, look at everything, or you can call your state regulatory board, say, hey, I'm getting started. Can you come give me a hand?
Does the state charge for that, Bob? How does
No,
that work?
no,
No?
they won't charge for that. Yeah. Well, they're already
But then
paid
they
to go. They're the state of Texas, they have investigators. They can go out and say, hey, I need some help. They'll come out, make sure that you're doing everything. In fact, after you get started, I think they have 6 months to go out in the first place to make sure that you're doing everything correctly. And again, if you're an older company and you feel, well, maybe I'll double check, make sure I'm doing everything correctly, then you do a self audit or have an auditor come in to do it or have them come in before they come in on it. And
that and that's a lot of what you've done, right, Bob? You've
yeah,
done a lot of audits. So we don't need to go through every step, but could you give us a high level of what pest control owners should expect if someone comes out to?
well, basically what what I do is I go through the regulatory law and regulation book of the state. And I follow down the line of what they're supposed to be doing. I can check technician records, making sure they're technician records, make sure they're properly licensed, making sure they're properly insured, making sure that their chemical use record or their information on their documents is correct. They're using the right the real estate inspection WDI form. We've gone through several WDI forms in Texas. I think it's SPCB T4 or 5 this time is a different one all the time, and make sure they're doing their properly, making sure they're filling out their paperwork correctly, making sure they have the training records and they can back up the training that they done in their training files. I'm sure that every technician has a file at their office, and they should be filling that information with what kind of training they received, what kind of work they've done on the job training and stuff. Is all that should be filed in there. Property insurance, chemical records. Their trucks are properly equipped and property information. All this, I follow along the laws and regulation books, making sure that they've done everything correctly.
Fascinating, fascinating. I mean, that it seems so straightforward, but it's just one of those things. We've interviewed a lot of pest control owners, and they always tell us their startup story, and it is go, 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 pound the pavement, knock the doors, make the sales, like,
Exactly. Yeah.
and it's a lot of pressure that a lot of these items probably often go overlooked, but could save a lot of headaches if it's done
Yeah.
right in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
Bob, can you quantify from what you've seen in your experience, the risk that pest control companies run across these three different areas? Wood destroying insects, application issues, and then the last one we haven't touched on a lot yet is the bites that you had mentioned. What kind of risk do these companies run when they get into trouble legally like this? Financially, do you have any kind of ballpark range that this can?
Unfortunately, I cannot get that information after it's done, but they'll let me know if it was in our favor or not in our favor type of thing.
Got it.
About bites and stings, mostly people think they got bit by a brown recluse spider. Most of the time, it's an infection after someone got bit and they think they got bit by a spider. Sometimes they can't find a spider. There was one case that they swore that Daddy Longlegs bit them. And
Everybody
caused
knows
them
that
to
one.
I know. So the worst cases I've worked is with the fire ants, the imported fire ants. Nursing home, trying to remember how many. I got one case that 3 different nursing homes, the patient died in the nursing home because they were eaten up by fire ants.
That's horrific.
One was she was laying on her stomach and she was bitten on one side because she was on her back, and you can see the differentiation where she was stung. And the pest control company said, "Oh, that's not fire ants. That was carpenter ants. So we don't treat for carpenter ants." So, and the other one was an ICU unit in a hospital where the fire ants got to the patient.
Fire ants. And so now, were these instances then where the pest control company was contracted,
Yes,
they were
yes,
supposed to service
yeah,
for fire ants
yes, yes,
and then just did not
yeah,
fulfill it?
yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting.
I have to go in a lot of detail for the ICU unit in the hospital, how they worked their way from a erosion pad up under the wall, up into the wall, across the thing to the tubing and to the patient in the hospital. Yeah, my recommendation, if any pest control companies out there are doing type of nursing home or any medical, one, nursing homes, have the nursing home people do not put their patient's bed against the outside wall. Do not let them eat in bed. And if they defecate or urinate, make sure they clean up immediately. So, yeah,
That's
that's
good
what happens.
advice.
But again, they said, well, we can't guarantee all this until they go, well, that's your job. You got to make sure that these patients are taken care of. You just can't say, well, we can't always get rid of the fire ants and stuff.
I think that's really wise counsel to just lay out, because I know that a lot of pest control owners will target commercial opportunities, commercial grade
Yes.
jobs. Like if there's one nursing home, there's probably several other franchises. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
going in with a very clear understanding of, how they can protect themselves against, horrible situations like the one you described is extremely
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah. Exactly.
You mentioned you don't get the details on the specifics in terms of the financial outcomes, but you do see whether they win or not. In cases where you see them win and where they don't, what are some of the biggest differentiators? I assume it comes down to documentation, but are these folks having better videos and photo evidence, or what? Do you see any trends of what the differences are when they win versus when they lose?
Again, it all comes down to documentation.
Well, we're kind of at the top of our time limit here. Bob, was there anything else that you wanted to share that we didn't quite get into that you think would be valuable for listeners?
A couple of things I didn't want to talk about on WDR reports is use the correct equipment. And there's tons of stuff you can use when you go like in an attic or a crawl space. Make sure you have a proper protective equipment going under there. Make sure that your technicians who are going are physically able to go to do the inspection, because I'm 6'1" and 250 pounds. And you said you couldn't get there during your inspection. If I can reach it, you sure as hell could have reached it.
There we go. There we go. That's good.
My big thing is photographs, videos. Is my big
Excellent.
thing, especially inspection, WDR inspection, and termite work. Big time.
Amazing. Well, great. This has been awesome, Bob. We really appreciate you coming on. I think we got a lot of great insights across those three core areas of risk and additional insight into how to make sure that you are legally protected as a pest control company owner. So appreciate you coming on, Bob.
Well, thank you for having me. If y'all need anything else, give me a holler. You got my phone
Excellent.
number.
Thank you, Bob.
Take care.